Hello, everybody. Oh, good. My mic is working. I'm Kathy Chang, the co-president of Q, and this is our second showrunners panel, this time in partnership with Black Alumni Council. And to introduce our panelists, I'm going to start with Courtney Lilly here on the left. He is executive producer, showrunner of Blackish, Grownish, and Mixedish, all on ABC. He previously wrote for Arrested Development, My Boys, The Cleveland Show, and Undateable. A fun fact about Courtney is that at one point he ran 2 Zoom writers' rooms simultaneously for Blackish and Mixedish. I have a fun fact for each of you. On our right, we have Raamla Mohamed. She is creator, executive producer, and showrunner for Onyx Collective's Reasonable Doubt, currently on Hulu. Prior to that, she was writer, co-executive producer for Little Fires Everywhere, and she previously was a Shondaland writer, where she penned 11 episodes of Scandal. And fun fact, Reasonable Doubt, for that show, Raamla hired an all-Black writer's room and ensured every episode was helmed by a Black director. And our center is our star moderator, Chris Maddox. Chris recently served as writer-producer for the CW soap Dynasty. After coming from ABC's hit drama A Million Little Things and Fox's Monarch, he got his break staffing on the CBS series Bull. And fun fact, prior to becoming a writer, Chris was an actor who booked parts on Modern Family and Law and Order LA. So let's have a round of applause for our acclaimed speakers. And then take it away, Chris.
Hello, is the mic on? So good to see everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, all of you Columbia alumni. Do I need this? Yes, I do need this. Okay, hi. It's so great to see all of you and to be with both of you, Courtney and Raamla. Also a fun fact, Raamla, I had the privilege of acting in one of her 11 episodes of Scandal, the crossover.
Yes, that's correct.
Of How to Get Away with Murder Scandal. So I've known you for a little bit.
You were so great. I remember.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Listen. And Courtney, we met recently on the picket line.
Yeah.
On the streets. Week 9. We're doing it, guys. We're doing it. But today, the topic is not the writer's strike, even though it may come up in conversation. Today, we're talking about how to become a Hollywood showrunner. And what better guest to be having that conversation with than the two of you. But before we begin that conversation, let us rewind the clock a little bit. Let us go back to Morningside Heights, Columbia College. Can you share with us any highlights, a special memory that you look back on fondly on when you were at Columbia College, whether it be like a favorite class or a favorite memory, or when you maybe first arrived, or anything you'd like to share with us?
You want to go?
Yeah, I would love if you went first.
Is it mine on? Oh,
Yeah.
Is it? Maybe. Kinda. I hear.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I lived in John Jay 6. And I remember when I saw the Seinfeld restaurant, and I was like, a Seinfeld restaurant. And then I thought maybe it was like a tourist attraction, which it is, but then I was in this dance program called Orchesis, and it became a ritual where after the dance concert we would go to Tom's, and I don't know, I felt like I was really in New York because I was like, yeah, this is my place, the Seinfeld restaurant. But yeah, when I think of Columbia, I do think of those times. Yeah, and then kicking you out because you're sitting there too long.
Yeah.
Turn the table over. Move on.
Yeah, exactly.
I mostly just think, because I have a terrible memory, I mostly just think about the friends I made there, because, it's a very unique place. And we were talking a little earlier about the green room, and I had my 25th reunion last year, and it was pitiful. And I actually enjoyed that because my girlfriend went to Stanford and they're all very rah-rah about it. And I think everybody comes back, and it felt like it was still some of the Columbia experience that I was accustomed to, which was kind of like throw you in the deep end and figure it out, which is how I learn better. So like for me, so much of, and again, all the memories of going back to, the campus, and I was trying to take my girlfriend around, you're sitting there and it's like, well, this was, and like, I didn't remember any of the buildings. I don't remember I think I'd been in the library like 3 times ever. I got lost, and it's impossible to get lost on that campus. And it was just like, I mean, that's what my college experience was like. It wasn't Michigan. It wasn't like these big traditional schools. It was just like, you're in New York, you make some friends, you figure it out. And yeah, it was great for me. But it took me really going back for the 25th to really figure that out. So yeah.
That's nice to going back for the first time. It's like, okay, wow, the memories maybe slowly come back to you. If you had,
oh, I was like fighting it mostly. I was really fighting the idea that I got anything out of it. And then I realized how much I did. I was like, I've figured this all out on my own.
Yeah. Another fun fact for you two, you both started your careers having done the diversity programs, right? You did the Nickelodeon, and then Raamla, you did the ABC Disney.
Yeah.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about your journey? Did you always know you wanted to be a TV writer? Did you have your eyes on that particular prize, or did you come about it in another avenue for both of you?
You know what? I guess I'm dating myself a little bit. I feel like there wasn't this knowledge of like TV writers or showrunners. So I didn't know like what TV writers did. I was kind of more into movies. But then I felt writing movies was a little intimidating. So I kind of thought I was going to be one of these people on like those VH1 like specials who like talked about what was going on in the 90s and the films, and like one of these speakers,
Yeah.
and I was thinking, oh, I'll get my master's in critical studies, and I'll just talk about like how Ice Cube's song affected the Los Angeles climate, and that was gonna be exciting for me. But it wasn't until I had applied to USC and some grad schools and came to LA to go to USC and started taking some television classes and kind of people coming in and speaking and talking about the process, that I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And then a year after I graduated from USC, I got a writer's PA job at Grey's Anatomy in season 6, which felt like, now it's like season 20, but it was, I remember just holding this like big thing of menus and being really scared. And I had, known about like Shonda Rhimes, who was like this really powerful Black female showrunner, and there was like no Black female showrunners. And I just walked in, and they were just like sitting on kind of couches in a circle and talking about stories and laughing. And then they'd be like, okay, ready for lunch. And then I brought them lunch, and then they'd take walks around. And I was like, is this your job? Like, I need this job.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what sold it. I was like, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. So I kind of worked my way up.
And you should know the PA is very powerful. Getting lunch for the writers is like a thing. So, so doing those jobs well and knowing what people order is super, super important.
Yeah. And I totally I Columbia'd it, as I like to say. I had a chart of like the restaurants, and then I would keep like the names next to what they ordered, and then I'd overhear them talking about like during lunch what they hated and what they didn't, and then I put like little marks, like an X, like I was like, oh, Zoanne doesn't like that sandwich or something, and then I put like a check, like, oh, they like that. And then when we go back to that restaurant, and they'd be like, what did I get? And I was like, well, last time you had the sandwich and you didn't like it. And they're like, oh, like they. So I just, so I tell people that it doesn't matter where you are in the ladder, like just be the best, PA or, assistant that you can be.
That's great. Yeah. No, I was in New York in the late 90s, and I started off as a journalist. I worked at the Providence Journal Bulletin. That was my first job right out of college. I worked there for a year, and then I moved back to New York, and I worked online because it was the late 90s and everybody did a version of that, it felt like. And at some point I talked to a friend about having a desire to write for television, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it meant. It's the same thing as you're saying, Raamla. Like, showrunner, all that stuff. I didn't know what a writing thing was. I would be like happy to have any kind of job, Saturday morning stuff. Who cared? I didn't care, but it just felt like something because I watched a lot of television. And then I at some point mentioned this out loud to somebody, and a friend of mine told me about the program that Nickelodeon had started. And this is like the end of 1999, and I got incredibly fortunate. Like, she told me about it. I wrote a Simpsons spec because it was a show I knew well. And I just sent it out there, and that's what it was. And because I think it was the first year of the program, and they didn't get, and again, I think the whole television awareness, was just not the same thing. They only had maybe a few hundred applicants to choose from, and so I got to be one. And it was a big, they chose like 4 people, and they moved you out, and they gave you health insurance. I was getting paid.
Moved you out?
Oh yeah, no, I got relocation expenses. I got health insurance. I was getting paid more than I did in Los Angeles and in New York, and it was cheaper here. Like, I was still collecting unemployment back in New York because I got laid off.
Win-win. Okay.
Oh no, it was great. I mean, it was great. But that gave me my first experience. But I did come out here to do television. That was like what I was specifically interested in was TV. But again, like, even I would say, through my first experiences through the Nickelodeon program and stuff like that, you would hear about like who I didn't know a single name of a showrunner until I had a meeting. Like, and even then it wasn't like, my first meeting was with Yvette Lee Bowser, and it went great. And she was awesome. I'm in our house for 2 hours. I was working at a law firm in Encino, just like literally fixing copy machines and stuff. But I had long hair at the time, and I would read during my break. And her husband answered the door for the meeting at her giant, beautiful house. And he was like, "Wait, you're the brother that reads every day," because they lived right down the street from the law firm. And I'm like, this is going great. And then we get in there, 2 hours with her and her co-EP. We talk, and it was fantastic. And I'm like, I'm going to get this job. And they ended up going for somebody else, but I knew I was on the path. But that was the first showrunner meeting I'd ever had. And that was the first real idea of a showrunner. And I still didn't know what the job was. And I probably didn't know until 3 years ago, really, when I started doing it. But like, even then, it's just, the culture's just changed so much, in that time.
People make it up as they go. I mean, it sounds
100%.
a bit.
Yeah, I don't think it's a real thing, but we can talk about that later.
Okay, so Nickelodeon, Disney, PA, Shondaland Camp, and also another thing that they have in common is that you both have risen up through the ABC ranks in a way with Shondaland and Kenya Barris, and you started. Can you just tell me how that influenced your path to become a showrunner? Being with ABC, did it give you any edge? Did it represent any sort of roadblocks? Did it help propel you through the Hollywood landscape a little bit better? Or how was that like?
All of it, and it seems reductive, but so much of it is just luck, like just is. I got to run Blackish because nobody else wanted the job. That's what it was. I'd been there from the beginning, and I didn't necessarily want the job. It's not what I set out to do. I was doing pilots. It was a great gig. We were just talking about it downstairs. We were doing 20-something episodes. It felt good, but it wasn't my show. It's not what I was trying to do. But people moved on. People were trying to, again, when something gets hot, people are ready to go do their own thing. And for me, it just came down to an opportunity where they're just like, "Hey, do you want to run the show?" At first, the studio was very much like, "Hey, congratulations, you're running the show." And I'm like, "Let's have a talk." We're not, that's not how this works. But being prepared for the opportunity when it came, I'd been with the show since pretty much the beginning. So it ended up being successful and working out, and it turned into a great opportunity. But it was not like I never set out to be like, I'm going to run a show. I tried to create shows. But even then, and part of the thing where the showrunner is such a tricky title to me, so much was really about power, and like who actually has the power in the situation varies greatly from show to show to show to show to show, even regardless of who may have the title of showrunner or multiple people with the title of showrunner. And so for me, it was important to be able to make sure I could have a creative say in what was going on and not just have a title. They love giving you a title. People love giving you a title, but I think the thing is the money is important, and making sure that, because honestly, like you want to be able to make sure that you can create a new opportunity out of it. And new opportunity comes when people say, "Oh, you're good at this. Oh, I see your writing. I see your voice. I see all that other kind of stuff." If it's painting by numbers, then it gets, and like, honestly too, it's like, I've been on the show since the beginning. Nobody was going to be, I'm not going to make waves by running Blackish. Black guy, comedy guy, done this a long time. That doesn't do anything. you know? So like really I needed to make sure that I had the opportunity to do my thing within it. And so that was the negotiation really, but there's no plan. It literally just fell in my lap.
Do you think you were successful in that?
I mean, it definitely changed my career trajectory, I think. And I think, you know, that's why I got to run Mixed Dish also, because Blackish went well the first year, presented itself an opportunity. And like, I did that too. Cause again, everybody knows that like, oh, you keep running, you're the black guy who ran Blackish. Great. You run 2 shows. That's something different, you know? And it's like, yeah, but like, even then we didn't know what I mean, by the time I accepted it before the pandemic, you know, and then it's like 3 weeks later, that's where we are. But really is about, you know, so much of it is about being prepared and being able to maximize the opportunity when it presents itself, whether it's, you know, you're sitting in a room for, you know, months and months and months and you get an opportunity to write a script, or you're broken off into a smaller room. And so, you know, you can show the other writers what you're capable of. You know, there's so many, you know, it's finding those defining moments in a career and like, and hopefully having the preparation and the talent and the follow through to make the most of it. So that's what I was kind of able to do. So, but yeah, no, it was, I don't say anything with what made it easier is the Blackish was a hit. So I was able to, they knew me, so they weren't going to ask a lot of questions. And, you know, they trusted me. But again, trust is only as good as the first script. So
Ain't that true? Now, Raamla, you were on kind of ahead. I mean, come on, Scandal. I mean, what was that? I mean, so can you talk about that process of rising through the ranks at Scandal and Shondaland and ABC and how you got to become a showrunner through those in that camp?
Yeah, so I mean, I completely agree, Courtney. It is a lot of his luck. When I became a PA, it was, you know, before when Shonda had, you know, Grey's Anatomy in private practice. So, you know, she had the 2 shows and she was looking to kind of expand the empire, and that meant more opportunities for anyone who was kind of in the camp. There's a show called Off the Map that she was executive producing, and one of the writers, Jenna Bands, she worked on Grey's Anatomy and she asked me to be her assistant. So then I went on that show, and then I was the researcher on that show, the medical researcher. And then that show was getting canceled, but Scandal was being developed. So then, you know, Shonda was like, oh, I need someone to fact check the pilot, you know, for Scandal. And so I was like, okay. And, you know, reading that pilot, I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then, you know, she cast Kerry Washington, Columbus Short. She cast these people that I've, you know, really been fans of in movies. And then when that got picked up, I went on that show as a researcher. But it's, you know, it's interesting because the first season was only 7 episodes. Now that's like a cute little limited series. At the time it meant we're getting canceled. Like it felt like ABC didn't really maybe want to pick up the show, but they felt like they didn't want to insult Shonda by not picking up the show, you know. So and in a good way, it kind of created this environment in the room, because as a researcher I got to be in the room, and it just was kind of like, well, we're just going to make 7 great episodes. And it was really freeing and really exciting to kind of see it all come together. And then we barely got a season 2 pickup, and we only got 13 with a possible back 9. And then it was very interesting because I went from, you know, going like, okay, well, at least I'm writing episode 5. I'll get my health benefits through the WGA. If they cancel the show, you know, I can find another job, to like not even be able to tell people like what show I worked on because they wanted to know everything. I felt like they were going to kidnap me to like find out what was going to happen. The actors, sometimes they, you know, if I was like working on a script for the next episode, I'd have to hide. I would tell the AD where I was, and I have to hide because they want to like read it, because they read it. They only got it for the table read. And then we had to do like, it was coded and all this stuff. So it was very exciting. But again, I know writers who were staff writers like 4 or 5 times, because they would be on a show for 1 season, that show gets canceled, they move to another show, and the other studio doesn't want to make them a story editor, bump them up, because they feel like, well, especially if they're a diverse, you know, they're like, well, we pay for a diverse staff writer, so accept this. So I got lucky because I was able to keep rising up through the ranks because the show was still on the air and still a hit.
Which is amazing. It's a feat in and of itself, really.
Yeah, for sure. So it is this weird thing where it's like, oh yeah, my first credit was Scandal. Like, oh, okay. But then there also, as a young writer, there's a fear of, you know, like you're at the party and then someone's like, yeah, you're not in the party anymore. So I hope you've enjoyed your time.
Your car's waiting.
Yeah. Yeah, I always said, I was like, I decorated my office just enough to have like one box, like I could fit things in one box. So yeah, but it was a great experience. It does sadden me a little bit that, you know, younger writers aren't getting the full writer experience, which means, you know, being able to not only write fast in a room, but also be on set and produce your episodes, and then even sit in post, like Shonda let me sit in post. So, you know, those are the things that, you know, you have to do all those things as a showrunner.
So now you're a showrunner. You're running your own show that you created, right? Reasonable Doubt, which if you've not seen it, go home tonight and start it. It's fantastic. Great casting. Your lead is phenomenal. I was like, who
Yeah,
is
she's
she?
amazing.
She's
Yeah.
amazing. Can you tell us about that process of getting that off the ground, as much as you want to?
Yeah, you know, I will say everyone wants their own show until they get their own show. Because it's a lot of work. It's not, like you said, it's not a real job. Like, I don't know who was, I want to find patient zero who said, you know, like, who was like, I got an idea. I'm going to be the showrunner and I'm going to do all these things. Like, who said that? It's like, there's a job for like 4 people. So yeah, so it was I developed it through the network at ABC. It was a different show. It was very much like, you know, networky, and she's like, you know, perfect and amazing. And anyway, then we went to streaming and I was like, oh, now we're going to do what I want to do. Yeah, it was fun. It was exciting. Again, it was great because I had such a strong vision about it. And so I felt like a lot of times if you don't have a strong vision of your show, then other people will fill in your vision. And, you know, then the show isn't as good.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And you got a second season, is that correct?
Yes, right before 7 weeks before the strike, but yes.
And so Courtney, you're the showrunner for Blackish, and then they were like, okay, now Mixed Dish 2 and then Grown-ish. Like, can you just walk us through how to secure all 3 of those? What was that process? It's like a lot. I mean, for making it up as you go, it's like, okay.
It was not something, again, very much not what I set out to do. So the first time Blackish fell in my lap, nobody else wanted the job. I took the job. It was a great place to be for that, because we were successful enough that I got to run a show without hearing no a lot. And I knew all the executives from having been on the show for years. So I could come in there. I remember, because it was before the pandemic and it was like 2019, and we were trying to shoot 2 episodes in Ghana. And that was like out the gate. That's what I was trying to do. And like nobody said no. You know, I mean, there's no film industry in Ghana to speak of, and became a logistical impossibility. But that's what I got to do. And that was, again, opportunity. It was huge. And like for me, creatively, having, you know, I mean, it's a little insane to sit there and go like, here's what I want to do. But that's kind of what I was able to do, you know? And so for that season, you know, we were dealing with a lot of like stuff on the show and so on and so forth. But it came out and did what we have to do. And we were trying to set up a spinoff at that point too. So like did everything, and there's a little bit of like one for them, one for me, you know, and it felt like it went pretty well. So well because of my relationship, I think, with Kenya and the studio, that when Mixed Dish needed somebody else to come in there, it made sense, you know. I mean, like it solved a problem creatively that I think worked. And I don't know if that show would have got picked up if there wasn't a pandemic. They were looking for specific things, you know, casting wise, and they're like, okay. And honestly too, once the pandemic hit too, it's just like nobody knew if we're going to be making TV again at any point. So it came real easy at that point. They're just like, do whatever, man. If you can make a TV show, that's great. That's great. I mean, I got no pushback on anything until we started shooting. But that again, that became an opportunity to do something where, I knew Kenya, I knew Tracy, the guy who directed the pilot, Anton Cropper, knew him, knew everybody involved. And it's also the same production staff. So like literally, everybody's like, well, how did you run 2 shows at once? I didn't. We had the same post-production team. We had different editors, but like I would get one call to talk about both shows. And in the end, with the pandemic going on, I would, Anton Cropper came on, who I knew well, and he was our producing director at that point. I could spend more time on the attention to the show that needed it, which was Mixed-ish at that point. And I had my entire staff for Blackish before who knew what I wanted, and knew the show well enough too. So you could kind of give them marching orders and they could go. So it was, so I got that opportunity. Then Mixed-ish was canceled. And then I got to do I think it was the last season of Blackish. So we only did 3 years there. And then I got conned into doing Grownish. But like that's a lot. I mean, like that, I just got tricked. I thought I was doing something nice and I messed up.
Con job.
Yeah.
Okay. Grownish, it's such it seems like it's an hour-long drama. I mean, and these kids are like so adept. They're great at, I'm like, they're really serving this up. I mean, what's that like being with these kids that have grown up in this whole franchise and the spinoffs?
Grownish was hard because my joke before I started Grownish was, I'm a 40-something-year-old man. I should be arrested if I'm watching Grownish. Like that was kind of, I'm not in the demo. It's not for me. That was the thing. But then I had to start watching the show. And then also we changed entire casts. So like at that point, like, Chloe and Hallie had gotten big and all that other kind of stuff. I didn't have to mess with any of that. Like that was just like, that was a whole different iteration. But what became challenging for us is that we were casting essentially, we were doing a reboot and recasting the show like you would as a pilot, but we were doing it under a regular production calendar. So that became an obstacle real quick when you're sitting there, like usually like, and again, with both Blackish and Mixed-ish, I had established kind of characters, templates. I was working within a form. Grownish, there's a form, but we had to reinvent the form to make it work for Marcus, and it's just different. You have Yara Shahidi, who, again, there's a lot of Fleabag references in it, and her talking to the camera is different than Marcus talking to the camera. There were concerns about, like, how are we going to keep the comedy going? Because it's going to be different. There's just differences between actors, but also like female leads and male leads and all these different kind of ideas. So it became a lot of reinvention and trial and error as we were going, all during the pandemic, and all under a time crunch because we just didn't get pilot timing for it, to develop it, to really develop it, and it's like supposed to be this show where it's like, like honestly, most shows, especially comedies, fall into several categories where you're either going to be like a workplace comedy, a family comedy, or a romantic comedy. And like, like largely a lot of the continuous thread of Grownish was the romantic angle of it, which we were still trying to keep alive. You have a lead actress who's in like 3 episodes. It was a maddening puzzle, but it was worth it. It was cool. But like I'm not cool, haven't tried to be cool, never been cool, never like didn't watch the show. All these kids, they'd be sitting there, I swear to God, they would tell me all these guest stars would become. We almost had Gunna on the show right before he got he was like 2 days before he got his like whole thing. And I'm just like, who's this guy? What's he doing? It's just not my thing. That's cool. That's cool. But
we're learning as we go, everybody.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm learning this thing, but like it was a lot, but all of it's just storytelling, and the storytelling part, the foundation that we needed to really fundamentally do, and the thing that I needed to do was establish what Marcus's character was going to be doing in this world and what his journey was. And really with Zakiya Alexander, who's ran the show with me and was like really the creative voice, but she had never run a show before. So like making sure that we stayed within the template of the show, making sure we were getting things done on time, but really just setting the table, because it needed like, a whole pilot. Usually you're like, okay, well, here's Junior and here's his roommates and here's this kind of thing. But we're also like, he's got his sister who's never going to be here in the show, and she's got to pass the show on to him. Just really trying to set up the show as much as possible in the first 5 or 6 episodes, just like you would in a pilot, to be able to then figure out the perpetual motion machine after that. Because every show, and I'm sure you found this on, Reasonable Doubt, like the best part of television is it's a very living thing. And it's like, you make it up as you go along. Lost, when they're all just like, we knew, nobody ever knows. Nobody ever knows. They make it all up as they go along, but that's actually the joy. And that's how it can stay relevant and current and breathing, that you're not writing to an end off all the time. You can sit there and go like, oh, we can do this. This is what it needs to be. So that flying by the seat of your pants thing doesn't scare me as much. It scares executives because they want to know where it's going, but it's kind of a little more freeing when you don't, you know?
Well, what you were saying earlier, the idea that you hopefully you have an idea, otherwise it'll be taken from you. And so really trying to strengthen that muscle a little bit, but sometimes you don't, and you just listen to your team.
I think that's different than having an idea. I think you know there's a truth and a heart about what you're doing. I think when it comes to the certainty of like, it's just like you're just walking blindly a little bit, you know, and it's like, you know, that there's a finish line there. I just feel like the more you map it out, and it's a hard thing to say, because like when we did the Blackish final season, like I came in there and I'm like, here are 13 episodes, here's what we're going to do. And here's how we're going to try to get from A to B, C to D. And we're going to do an episode where they were on Family Feud, so Jack can get a victory and all that kind of stuff. But Steve Harvey was in the Maldives, so we didn't do a Family Feud episode. And we did one where they went to the Lakers practice, you know, like, and you have these guiding posts. It's almost like it's, you know, it's your core philosophy, these things that you believe the show is about. And just like your characters, you put them through and you test what their philosophies are as they go through the trials. And that makes what the drama is. Often as a creator, you're doing that too, because you're sitting there and you're like, I think this is the show, and then you write an episode and you're like, shit, this isn't really the show, is it? You know? Or you have actors who aren't able to do what you need to do, and you need to be able to pivot and move and all that other kind of stuff, and being rigid in that is just going to make everybody else miserable, because it's going to make the actors be in a position where they can't trust you because they're not doing things they're comfortable with. You're going to be behind with production. Your writing staff is going to feel, even though if you know what it is, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to be fluid in what it is, because again, you created it in your brain. It's the statue in the marble, but like, you just have to keep hacking away at it. And there's days, just like as all writers we know, we're like, this sucks, this is terrible, but you know you're going to get there. It's a faith in a way. I don't know if I'm describing it what you're feeling at all, but
yeah, I think I when I have like interviews with directors or you know, other department heads, I say the thing about me is that I am very decisive and clear about what I want, but also open. And they're like, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. But I'm like, but what I mean is more that, like you said, like I kind of have a goalpost of what I know the show is about. And then sometimes that can change, you know, like it changed with casting, and we cast this guy as a security guard, and when we were casting, you know, it was supposed to be this just kind of like super, like, you know, like hot, you know, chocolate drop guy. Like, you know, so, and we started, you know, auditioning, and these guys are attractive, but they weren't good at acting. And I was like, but I need them to be able to act. And so we found this guy who was like, he was cute, but he was a really good actor. And when we did the pilot, he had this kind of awkwardness that I didn't really expect, but it actually was helpful for me and kind of changed a little bit of how I saw the show, like his character in the show. Cause I was like, oh, he's kind of awkward, and oh, now he's kind of creepy. And I was like, oh man, let's do that.
You got great humor out of it too. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I was like,
yeah.
Okay. You know, like you see something and yeah, and then sometimes, you know, you see that like that, I don't know, that like you write, especially first season of a show, you know, I wrote, you know, we wrote like the second episode, and the execs really felt like, you know, people get nervous. They feel like the audience isn't going to understand things. So they wanted me to spell out things in the script. And in my, you know, overnight, just we're about to shoot, quick rewrite, you know, I was like, fine, and like, you know, wrote it. And then everyone's like, oh, great, it's so good, it's so good. And then I saw the cut and I was like, what? Like, I just was like, oh, I have betrayed myself. This isn't the show. This isn't I see the show going on a path that I don't want it to go on. And so I had to kind of like take the reins. And then, you know, sometimes it takes seeing what you don't like and then knowing like, oh, okay, like, right, yes, this is not this version of it's not a bad version of the show. It's just not the show that I want to do. So I was like, and let's bring it back. And then once I was able to do that, then I'm able to say no, because you know, people are saying no to me more because I haven't proven myself, right? But, you know, I do think I always would say, like, you know, my name is on this show. When I worked for other people, I would say it's not my show, and go to sleep at night and feel great. But then I was like, oh, my name's on the show. It's my show now. So, you know, you want to protect it. I've also just, because I was a researcher and, you know, I, you know, worked on a medical show, and, you know, you see all these facts about what people get from TV, you know, how influential it is. And so I also, you know, always want to be responsible about what I'm putting on television. You know, a large Black cast, but I want it to show, you know, not just, you know, they always want to kind of bring you a lot of lighter skinned actors, you know, but I wanted to see all shades of people, and I didn't want the darker actors to be the bad actors, the bad people on the show, and then light, or like the heroes, you know. So, you know, there's so many. It's not just the writing, and it's not just the creativity. It's also the responsibility of what you're putting out there, and also it is, you know, an $80-90 million corporation that you're essentially the CEO of, and they're all looking at you to see, like, are you going to be able to run this company? Because you're a manager, essentially.
Right. Of lots of different people. You're interfacing with the actors, with the writers, with the directors, production, all of the executives.
A lot of feelings.
A lot-
So
a lot
many
of feelings.
feelings.
I love the thing you just said about like the you know, 90 million. It's like it doesn't get reported like that, but it's like, oh well, so and so just made a $90 million movie. Everybody's like, oh, that's a lot of, and that is some of the pressure that is looked upon you when you're doing that. You know, where you're sitting there like, this is very expensive. This would have starred Schwarzenegger back in the day, you know, something like that.
Yeah,
it's for real.
I know, exactly. And then sometimes, you know, like, you know, you see people online making comments like, what happened to this person? What happened to that person? And it's like you said, like, you know, he was in the Maldives, you know, like that didn't work out, or especially with COVID, this person wasn't vaccinated.
Yep.
So, you know, and I had to, you know, write in a line, like someone wasn't coming into court again because they were on another show, you know, so there are things that you have to, it's a lot of improvisation that happens.
So when you were staffed on shows, did you understand any of this before having become a showrunner? Like you had to, did you see Shonda pivoting to, you know, for casting or any of these moments? Were you privy to any of these things?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I will say in my entire run of Scandal, you know, people would be like, oh, like, are you gonna, is that, like, do you want to be Shonda when you grow up and like have your shows? And I was like, no, like, I don't want to show, like I was like, if you actually knew what people had to go through, like when Shonda would come back and she's like, oh, I was up till 2 a.m. had to deliver this cut, you know, with the editors. And I'm like, I was like high and asleep. And I was like, this is the life I want to lead. You know, I was like, all I need to do is be able to like pay my Columbia loans, and go to dinner with my friends and like be able to, you know, go on a mildly rewarding trip with Marriott points. You know, I don't know, like,
there we go.
I was just like, what do you need? And so, but I was like, if I can work like 10 to 6 and not, you know, I don't know. It just for me, it felt like so daunting. The writing and pitching was enough for me. So to have to deal with all that other stuff, but it wasn't until actually I became a co-EP on Little Fires, that it's co-EP. I don't know if you feel this way, Courtney, but co-EP is an interesting place because you're high enough to have influence and make decisions, but you're not the last decider. So you're putting in a lot of work and trying to shape the show and talking to the showrunner and creator and trying to, you know, get your ideas in, and you feel like I'm doing it. And then, you know, you realize, oh, like I did all that work, but I'm not the last decider.
And it's also like plays in some of my myth of the showrunner thing, because part of what a lot of showrunners, in my experience, will do is they keep the writer's room is its own very special place, and all the other aspects of production are kept out of it a lot of times, you know, like, so, you know, and again, sometimes it's necessary. It's an incredibly hard job. And like, honestly, 99% of the people in this business are not made for it. Even the ones who are very successful at doing it, they are not great bosses, you know? And so like, whatever they need that space to be, if they need this place where like, I don't want to talk about production, I don't want to share this, I don't want to do that, because it's exhausting. And most of us did start as writers. And so like, it should be a place that feels familiar and safe. But again, also part of the power is not empowering the people around you with information and so on and so forth, and that's what I've seen traditionally and throughout the career. There's been, glimpses behind the curtain and stuff like that. But like, it's why we have people who claim to be geniuses now, because they cater to that. They want that to be in the room. They talk about, and they come in and tell stories about how they're heroes because they've solved problems that we didn't even know about, and it's like, and there's a cult of personality around them. Every single show, like Raamla's show, she's a cult leader now. That's probably, you are. There's got to be the people, and it's just like that. What it is, and like I was that on my shows. It kind of like is the natural way the job goes in a way.
No, it's so unnerving though.
It's really weird.
Yeah, because
you're a person too.
well, and a co-leader. Yeah, I'm human, guy, as a co-leader. Yeah, but it is weird because sometimes I'm like, why don't they just tell me? Or there sometimes you can see like people are scared to say, and you realize, oh right, like I'm the boss.
Oh, yeah.
Like I remember being around my boss, it's still the boss, but I'm like, I want to be, I'm not a regular mom, I'm a fun mom.
Oh no. That's what I would do. So many. I don't have kids, so I just did dad jokes all the time on Grownish. I remember there's this joke that I still love, and I just kept repeating it like it was a Letterman bit, because like we're also on Zoom, and I was trying to disarm people, and they just couldn't. And it's like, again, it'd be fear. And I'm just like, what are you afraid of me for? And so we had Young Miami on the show, and I think she was still dating Diddy at the time. And this is all news to me. I just learned all this. So like she was dating Diddy, and I said, I've got the perfect joke for this, guys. So I'd go into the room, and I'd be just like, I hear that Diddy and Young Miami broke up. He's dating somebody new now. Age appropriate Miami. Room hated me. But for me, I'm just like, I'm a human being. Like you just need to see that I'm not great at all of these things, that I'm going to embarrass myself. But it was, and I didn't ask for people to laugh. It wasn't like, but it was like, I had to continually come in there and like, just look silly sometimes.
And be amongst the people that you hired, you brought on, I would imagine, right? Too, a little bit.
I mean, honestly, depending on the show, like there are places, like showrunners a lot tend to hide in editing, because editing is the best. Editing, you're working with people who are incredibly creative. They solve problems. All you're doing is solving problems in editing. You sit there, you look at something, and you're just like, what the hell? What are they thinking? This is terrible. And they're like, well, what if I played this song instead? You're like, you saved it. This is awesome. And they go, and you tell them to do things, and they come back, and they got a new cut, and you feel great. It starts off terrible. The trajectory is always the same. You see a director's cut, they're terrible because directors aren't funny. And then they go and they do something, and you're like, God, I just want this to be better. And your editor makes it better, and you're working with them, and it feels awesome. Instead of writing where you're sitting there, it's like, this is all terrible, we don't know what any of this is, we've got to make this up. It's just a better place to be, and I think that's where a lot of people hide because of that. And the room, one of the things I did learn between getting a show and not being on a show was like, a writer, we often think the room is the show, that's our experience with it, and it is. These things start there, but like once you start having to deal with production and post-production and effects and all these other kind of things, and like you're seeing how many people every day, writers can sometimes get a little high and mighty about it. We're seeing people every day who are showing up, driving from God knows where to be at set at 6:30. You see how big a production is. And I think my myopia was to how big a production is, because you go down there a couple times a year, and I got along with everybody, but it's not the same thing as when you're doing it every day. Every day you're talking to transpo, every day you're doing all that kind of stuff, and that's what makes it feel a little bigger than just being in the room. So it does depend on personality whether or not you're going to find safe harbor in the room. But also writers question you, so that's part of the thing. Where sometimes you're like, I got enough of these guys.
Well, that's the benefit of like having production in the city that you're the writers room.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I've never done it any other way.
Oh gosh. Okay. How much time? Okay, we have more time. I am wondering, okay, we sort of talked about this a little bit, showrunner horror stories. And we've all heard about this, right? Like management styles aren't the best. They take the credit, some people. Can you share any personal horror stories that you've experienced or heard about, and how you maybe have learned from them and experiences that have then made you a better writer, creator, showrunner yourselves?
There's like, You know, we're talking about that Mo Ryan book, and look, some of that stuff, there's a lot of stuff that's just known, you know, when it was Vanity Fair publishing that chapter, you're like, yeah, no, this isn't news. And we have a very, we have a much more broad vocabulary about bad working conditions and trauma and abuse and all these other kind of things now than certainly we did when I started 20 something years ago. So to say that you don't have scars from like this business is not true, but it's also like kind of just the way it was, which is not an excuse for it. So yeah, there were a lot of things you picked up and learned. I try very hard to be open and caring, because I don't know if that was what was presented, like accessible. And it was, and that's a double-edged sword, because sometimes when you just don't have a lot of time and you're tired and you're being pushed, and I'm not the world's most emotionally available person in the world. So like, it's not like I'm much more direct, in those kind of things. And but one of my management styles is my number 2 that I've had on like most of my shows is we call her the CEO because she's the chief emotional officer. That's part of what she does. She knows what she's doing. That's what her job is. But I am open to things in a way. People need to be able to talk to me to tell me when they're having problems or issues or things they need to deal with, because I've been in the situation where I didn't have that and it feels terrible, and people can't perform and can't do their job then. And also to know that even though you may not be everybody, especially in a writer's room, the stakes are so high, they're like, this is my first job. This is such a big deal. This script, this thing. And even if I don't want, and I don't feel like I have the time, and I know I'm going to rewrite it because we changed some stuff, all that other kind of stuff, you have to really give them the time and the courtesy that you wish you had when you were on a staff, and that you could, and it may not be time to give them a rewrite or big extensive notes, but to give them compliments and make them feel supported, so that there's a time when you can use them and they can, be the person that gets you the joke that gets you home out of the scene, because people, especially writers, again, actors, same way, it's a very emotional business. A lot of people are just really, and unfortunately, a lot of people in show running positions for a variety of reasons are like me, and who aren't just like, literally it'd be things happen. I'm like, what's going on? So and so is just like, oh yeah, no, her husband just left her. I'm like, when did that? This is crazy. You're in the editing room. Yeah. And I'm just like, yeah, it's just like, oh man, okay, well, whatever she needs, we'll figure it out. I'll talk to her. All that kind of stuff. There's a lot of that because people live in their lives, and if they're living their lives, that's the thing I learned the most. Because like I never talked like it's not, this is again a joke what my number 2 would always have. She was just like, she literally had a miscarriage and did not leave the writer's room. Yeah. So like that was the level of fear that people had. And we had the same, like, again, there were examples across the board for people, and you're like, that's not the show I want to be in charge of by any stretch of the imagination.
But that's interesting though too, that in terms of casting your writer's room, hiring people, it's not necessarily, how do you do that? It's maybe the what's on the page, but also the personality. Can you talk us through that process too as a showrunner when you're hiring?
I think
people?
I'm bad at hiring, so maybe Raamla, you should do this. Sounds like you did a great job at it.
Yeah, I mean, if, you do get a lot of submissions. I remember when I was a showrunner's assistant, and that was the first time I saw submissions coming from agencies, and I was like, oh, like a lot of working people can't write. And I was like, maybe I'll be a mediocre writer who will get paid. But yeah, it's still, even when I was doing my show, like getting submissions, it's just interesting. I'm actually, I wish that people wrote specs of shows more.
Thank you.
Because I like a pilot doesn't really help me. I mean, you could have worked on this for 2 years, and also the world doesn't really tell me if you can, necessarily write my show. Actually, what I'm looking for when I'm hiring people is who I can rewrite easily, not if their like script is amazing or whatever. I mean, I'll decide in the first 5 pages if I think they're a good writer. I want to feel like they have a command of characters and all that stuff, but I also want to see that the strengths that I have could improve their writing style. and looking and seeing like, oh, there are a lot of relationship dynamics on my show, and if it's legal stuff, I'm like, oh, they're good at writing that stuff, or or like intense dramatic moments. I'm really a stickler for scenes turns that a lot of people don't have. Like it'll be a scene where people are at lunch and they're just laughing and talking about something, and if I could lift that scene, and does it matter? Yeah, like I'm like, okay. And it's like, there's a lot of like, well, this is the flavor. Like, okay, well, the flavor is unnecessary. So yeah, when I'm looking for that, I am also looking for a personality, because you're in a room for a long time with people. I have had interviews with I'm going to say men in particular who like to interrupt me when I'm talking, and I do not hire them.
Oh, not the showrunner. Don't do that.
Yeah. So I because I see that may be, that may be something that happens in the room. So yeah, I'm looking for really like kind of kind, nice people, not people I feel like are going to be bullies. The showrunner job is an alpha male or female job. I am not an alpha female. Like my personality is not really that. But I still have, like, just like I said, I know what I want, and I am clear about things, and I'm also not afraid to stand up for what I want. But when I was doing the pilot, like day 4, one of the camera guys came up to me and was like, "Oh, you wrote this?" And I was like, "Uh-huh." And he was like, "I didn't realize that." He's like, "So you're like one of the producers?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm the showrunner. I'm your boss." But I think it's because I'm like 5'2", and like I have my sneakers on, and I just like to just stay out of the way, So
Wearing your
so,
Columbia
yeah.
sweatshirt.
Wear my Columbia sweatshirt. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, as far as hiring people, but I also, as far as what I learned, on being on a staff, is that you do have to give people an opportunity to learn, because the first couple seasons on Scandal, like I was not good at pitching. It was terrifying. I would have an idea in my head, and then someone else would say it, and I was like, "Oh, see, I should have said that." And everyone was like, "That's genius! It's amazing!"
Yeah.
And I was like, "I was thinking of it."
Yeah.
And then I was like, "See, the next thing like comes in my head, I'm going to say it because they're going to love it, and I say it and be like crickets." And I was like, "Ugh." So I just couldn't get I couldn't get the rhythm of it. So I try to, with the writers, if I'm going to turn in their scripts, I try to let them know things that that I don't like, or that I noticed, to kind of improve. Like, it's like, you guys are taking 4 sentences to say things you can say in 2. You have to have faith that the actors can act some of these things. And, like, this is because when I rewrite, I want them to know like what I'm changing and why. Or like, this, you guys are starting scenes too early, or I really hate typos, just stuff like that. And even in coming up with stories, like, think about like, what do you want to see? Like, which characters do you want to, and even if it's not right, but just trying to like open their mind up. And then I, kind of gave each one an opportunity while we were shooting to just voluntarily just come for a day on set, because they couldn't come, the whole time, but just to get the experience.
That's amazing, because sometimes you don't have a showrunner that actually, helps their staff learn. And so,
well, yeah,
helping you in the long run.
That's what I'm saying. It helps me, because if you don't teach the staff you have, right, and then you just fire people, then you gotta relearn all these people. And writers aren't mind readers, and I remember that from being on a staff. And it's hard when you're just kind of like pitching and pitching and pitching, and the showrunner's like, maybe, so you're like, okay. Or like one showrunner said, guys, there's like 1,000 ways we could tell the story. All of us are like, can you pick one so we can go home? Yeah.
I want to order dinner again.
That's we may have to order dinner is the sentence that no one wants to hear. And it's always at like 5 o'clock. Too late. And you're like, great. So then someone has to come and get your order. Then they have to put it in. Then you're staying till 8. It's not like a get dinner and take it to go. It's like, No, we all have to eat together. And then
Nobody wants that. Come on, we did that once today.
we're gonna get lunch today. Let's eat dinner. And then, okay, I guess we should keep talking. It's like, great, can't wait. And then the next day you come back and people are like, what is that? That wasn't good.
100% true.
Industry icons that inspire you. Is there anyone on your vision board that whose career you want to emulate, surpass? Any role models that or no? Maybe there's nobody. It's you're paving your own way.
No, you know what? I mean, Debbie Allen is someone who I really admire, mostly because I feel like, and when I say admire, not like to be because it's too late for all that, but more because she directed a couple of my Scandal episodes, and it's really difficult for female directors. I mean, I've seen it. They just don't get quite treated the way the male directors do. But Debbie Allen was treated better than other male directors. And I kind of observed her and trying to figure out why that was the case. And I think what it was is it's kind of like she has this like maternal figure about her that I think some of the crew guys and women kind of feel like she's taking care of them in some way, and she jokes with them. She was directing, she said, "Oh, cut," and then she was learning her lines because she was an actor in Grey's Anatomy, like between setups. And then she, during lunch, had to get on a call about Mariah Carey's Christmas special because she was choreographing that. And then after that, she came back to Video Village and was like writing up a grocery list for Thanksgiving of what she was going to cook. And I was like, what are you doing? I don't even, I just was like, I just want to get, because that's like not about the business. That's like knowing how to like run life, And so for me, like that has been very impressive for me. And most recently, Yvette Lee Bowser, who you're talking about, who is just, just so kind and supportive. And, she's been in this business she was the first Black woman to have a primetime television show with Living Single. This is her third strike, I think she told me. So it's crazy, but so particularly Black writers who had shows or were in this industry, even as early as you were, Courtney. Like I'm always like, how did you do that?
Because I didn't get to work with any Black writers. I talked about.
No, I'm saying there's no other support because there was like one token in every,
Yeah, it's weird. It's like, I mean, like, I love your answer, first of all, because it's like, I'm not great with comparisons. I don't, I'm a big sports fan. So I think, and I love especially the NBA podcasts are coming out now. And the way that they all talk about each other, I wish that, and the way chefs are too, they can, and like, I wish, and musicians were like, oh, we're just jamming with each other. Like, that's the greatest. When Raamla and I got to work together, like at the beginning of this year, I was like, this is what it should be like, just really interesting, talented people that I'm learning from. And like, I would go work for her in a second, and like, I'd probably fail miserably. It would be like, but like, still, that's the life that we're building. And talking about seeing Debbie Allen doing that, talking about Yvette and all these people, who do that. That's kind of, I think it's more, instead of a career journey, it's like a life journey, because like, you spend a lot of time doing this, and again, having gone through what the business has gone through in the last 20 years, you learn a lot about how you don't want it to be. And you also see people who, rise fast and fall just as quick, and everybody's ready to, talk shit about them on the way down, and it's true. It's just like, you can't really compare us. And the business is so different. It's just changed. It's like, if you want to compare, it's like, it'd be great if I could be Aaron Spelling. There's no, what are we doing? That's not who I am, And so really it's about building this life and building the kind of connections, the actual connections, both creatively and personally, that's made, hopefully allows me to continue to be challenged as a writer as you go through it. Because again, like I remember being on a Zoom, Sodden Patterson, and who else was on there too? A couple other writers, but mostly they come up through. Well, Sodden was with me, like me, because he was on Frasier, but it was like Prentice Penny, who was on Girlfriends, and a couple other writers, and like all of them had worked. And like, like when UPN and all that kind of stuff went down, that's where all the black shows went. Especially comedies, they just disappeared. Whole generation of writers lost. And, like Kenya and, and Jenny Rice Gensick Henry were on The Game, and all these writers who were on The Game and Girlfriends and all these other kind of stuff who have had full careers, blossom careers of being seen, and all these, like Tracy Ellis Ross, everybody's like, where'd she come from? She did 150 episodes of a sitcom, like this is what had kind of happened. But I didn't get to have, and again, I had my own path from it, but like I kind of, it was a different time. It was a different time and a different place for me. So I'm always grateful when I have the opportunity, because again, I don't even know, it's funny with Prentice, a friend of mine who I worked with, at one point he said, I can't believe you and Prentice didn't work together. And I'm like, you wouldn't hire us both. What are you talking about? It's just like, and we probably wouldn't take the job because our agents would be just like, no, there you got one, you're good. Right. And there is a math to that makes sense in a way too. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm just grateful to be able to, look, at any point I'm waiting for them to kick me out, just tell me I've grown too old, or the age appropriate Miami joke really was across the line, all that kind of stuff. So like, I'm taking every day. I'm not taking it for granted. I'm very grateful.
That's wonderful. I love that. I mean, I've been the only black writer in all my writers' rooms, so it's like it's okay. So what's next? Can you share with us any goals you have your eyes set toward? You're a showrunner. You both had overall deals. Is there anything else you want to do?
Not getting sick.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, keeping our profession, I think, at this point, I think it's a lot's gonna change, after all this kind of settles. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, I love to be able to continue the second season of the show. I think second seasons are special because you've gone through the war and now it's settling, and now you can write knowing the dynamics of the actors and the characters. And I learned so much from that first season, just about myself and budgets and who to trust, who not to trust. I like being on set a lot because I have spies on set, and so and they, unlike the network or producers or anyone else, they have no end game, right? They just, they'll tell you like, I heard we're not shooting this scene today. And I said, oh,
who told you that?
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Or, or this director, we're moving very fast, and I haven't gotten coverage on my makeup. Like I haven't gotten coverage on the person who I usually cover. And I'm like, okay. And these are things that may not get to me, but literally, I mean, it's like they're the troops on the ground, and so yeah, so just taking the lessons and being able to apply them would be exciting.
Great. Do you want to answer that? Yeah.
I don't know, man. we're gonna see. I'm going to Tokyo.
Hey,
that's exciting.
That's a goal, right?
That's
there.
a goal, and hopefully we'll get back to working at some point. It's so, like it's. I'm not. I can't envision things like that. It's not, because I believe again, it's all fake. It's all fake. Everything's fake. Everything's fake. And I would sit there and I'd bum people out because I go into the room and I'd basically be I'm like, guys, all this development is fake. Everything you read on Deadline's fake. Everything's fake until it's real. When it comes to your house for free or whatever you paid for Paramount Plus, that's when it's real. Or you're on a job or you're getting the thing. I can't do the fake thing. So it's just like, yeah, I got a deal. Yeah, there's some stuff that may happen, but probably not. Like anything I talk about right now would be like, hey, whatever happened to that thing?
Yeah.
It died because it all dies. It's all fake. That's what happened. There'll be no articles about anything. One day, maybe, and you'll never see my face on it. There'll be like somebody doing press and he's like, wait, Courtney did that? Yeah, that's the best case scenario. That's the best case scenario.
I just say until I see a billboard.
I like that. Yeah, they have to spend some real money on something
because they don't really put it on a billboard or a bus until
it's like getting ready to come out. Because we've seen it now. Like they will shoot it.
They'll shoot it and edit it.
And you're like, this is fake, guys. We're all here. It was all make believe. Remember that time we made that show that nobody watched?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, the billboard. Yeah. And that was like, I saw a billboard like 3 weeks before my premiere, and I said, oh, I guess they are going to air this. Great.
Well, do we have time for maybe one question from the audience or a couple questions? One question. Anyone have a question for our esteemed guests? Oh, oh boy. Okay. I'll say two questions. You, young, I feel like I'm. Is that okay? Running up with the microphone.
Hi, thanks so much for coming. This is wonderful. Raamla, I have a question for you. My name is Key, by the way. Do you think you'll ever make a dance show? I heard you mention you were in a dance group, and is that something that you think you'll make, especially with Debbie Allen as such a influence?
Oh yeah. I mean, I thought about doing like some kind of dance TV show. But then I was like, my mind always goes to production, and thinking about like, ooh, that means like songs clearing or choreographed dance. Like it's not just writing, but like knowing the dances I'd have to write. But I love So You Think You Can Dance and that movie Center Stage that came out and I was in college. Yeah, it's so good. But I think maybe I might just have to be a fan from afar. I do though feel like when I've thought about jobs or got like kind of interviewed for certain jobs or someone's like, oh, you're up for this. Someone told me a long time ago, you can be a genius in one room and a moron in the other. And so he's like, I just try to go to the rooms I'm a genius in. And so, sometimes there are shows or projects and you start working on it, you think about it and you're like, yeah, I don't think I would be good at this part. But no, but it's a great question. And maybe one day in my dreams.
One more. Anybody?
Hi all. Really appreciate your candor tonight. It's been great to hear your stories. I was wondering, I would love to see more of your work in features. And as the showrunner, I'm wondering, do you think it's more important to be spending time working across all episodes to develop the full scope of the project, or to be on set more to direct if you were ever to go into translate that into directing a feature?
First of all, for me personally, my story is I like television because there's several reasons why. And I actually mostly worked in network, and I like network television because I remember when I was teaching at AFI very briefly, there was a dean at that time, and they were arguing about like how the students were going to get Final Cut and all that other kind of stuff. And there's just like, nobody gets Final Cut. And I'm like, well, that's what we do as showrunners. That's our job. And as movie directors, that's not really how it works. And the joy of writing television is I'm mostly negotiating, and it is a negotiation with creatives, actors, directors, other writers. And I feel there's another producer angle of negotiation that happens in film that I am wildly uninterested in, personally. And I also love the thing I think that's different between television and film. And me, this is my hot take. I don't like that television is turning into long movies. I think television is character driven, and there's things you can do in television you can't do in film. And doing the hot start, nothing happens cliffhanger version of things where they're just 10 episode movies is, for me, creatively not interesting. So, and I think to what we were talking about earlier, the joy of the process is also in discovery. And that's what you get to do in television as opposed to film. So for me, where I spend my time on set, I have to be able to trust my directors. You have conversations with them. They have jobs they have to do. We have producers who tell them what to do, but a lot of things can be fixed in post. You're just really trying to get the big beats of what's going on, and if you're going to, again, try to control everything, you're going to make everybody miserable because you're going to fail. And then everything's going to get behind. 90% of what you're doing as television is not getting behind schedule. You never want to push. If you're sitting there, that's where you fail. If you sit there and you go like, all of a sudden it's like, guys, we got to push production, or we got to call a hiatus. You're just trying to avoid that as much as possible. So, as much as it's always, there's so many ways to fix it, whether it's in post, whether it's in rewriting it on the script, hearing a table read, figuring it out, just keeping the machine going. And that's the fun part of it to me too. And so like, I like doing things that aren't beginning, middle, end, closed narratives. Like it's old school TV. Like you'd watch 22 episodes of Cheers, and at the end there'd be some kind of cliffhanger episode, but it wasn't like, it was like a romantic comedy. It's like Sam and Diane gonna get together. And so like, do they kiss? Do they not kiss? Does he kiss somebody else? And it's those kind of things that really, that's how I look at making things work. And that's the most interesting version of it to me. So I don't know. I do know from the point of that the question though, I think like and that's part of the reason, again, part of the change of the business and why we're on strike and all these things. If you're going to come up with a TV show and you're going to be doing all the writing and you're going to be doing all the production and you're going to be doing all the post, all of a sudden you spent 2 years of your life doing that. And you may not be getting paid fairly for that, and like versus using it as a team sport where everybody's creating these things and you're working on it together and that comes out annually as much as possible. So there's an audience expectation for it, that you do get paid, your yearly rate, what you're getting paid is what you're getting paid for a year. And so the more these things turn and stretch out into years and years, that's also like years off your creative life. There are people, I'm not predisposed to be that way. I'm very collaborative in how I want to make things,
Yeah. No, I agree. There's something appealing. I have done a few features and there is something appealing of like, well, good luck. There's a script. And like no one's calling me. They're like, well, we'll let you know. We'll keep you posted when it shoots or if it shoots or at the premiere. And I'm like, I don't know. I think maybe because after like I had to pick a moon that Michael Ealy looked at. They're like, we have 4 moons for you to look at. And I was like, what? Like, I don't know. You pick a moon. It's a moon. They're like, and I it was like, here. I was like, I can't do this. But read a movie and, and let go and let God, I guess. But then there's a fear of that too, because now something has your name on it that you maybe have not really written. So I think they're pros and cons. But I think what at least is exciting now is there used to be kind of like a little bit of the snobbery that like film writers can't do TV and TV writers can't do film. But I think that's changing. So
Well, this was riveting. And I have to tell you guys that collectively they've done over 300 episodes of television together. Like, I mean, right? I mean,
I've done 400.
I mean, so they know what they're talking about. Well, in 1 year. Well, thank you both so much.
thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for asking
Thank you.
questions.